In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the mail merge feature in Microsoft Word to connect up to the data in Offering Helper and pull out the names and addresses for the purposes of making a church directory. So just briefly, some theory on how a mail merge works. With a mail merge, you have your data source, which in this little diagram here is my left-hand box, my names and addresses, and that's from the Offering Helper database. And then over on the right, we have our template, which is a Word document that can be a form letter or labels, and it contains text that we type as well as special codes that will display data. So what happens then, Word takes those two, combines them, and gives us our final merged document, which will be essentially multiple copies of our form letter or our labels with all of the data displayed in it. All right, so here we are in Microsoft Word. We've got a blank document. The first thing we want to do is click on the Mailings tab. That's where all the mail merge features can be found. And we need to tell Microsoft Word where to find the data. So we click on Select Recipients and Use Existing List. And then we need to go look for the folder that Offering Helper is installed in. So that'll usually be in your C drive and in your Program Files directory, unless you installed it somewhere else, but that's the default location. Then you go looking for the Offering Helper folder. And we want the names file. So click on Names, click on Open. Then it shows you the tables in that file, and we want the names table, so make sure it's selected and click OK. One thing we can do before we actually start laying things out is uh, order the data. When Microsoft Word pulls the data out of Offering Helper, it's just going to do it in kind of a random order, but obviously we want it sorted by last name. So I'm going to click on the Mailings tab up here, make sure it's selected, and click on Edit Recipient List. And that shows me all the data that's going to be pulled in. I've got some fictitious data that I'm going to use here for this demonstration. So next I click on Sort, and I want to tell it to sort by last name first. And then I also want to sort by first name because there might be more than one person with the same last name, so then you want them sorted by first name. So last name, then first name, and both are ascending. Click on OK. Now you'll notice it's changed the sort order here a little bit. Now another thing you can do here is you can actually select and deselect various people, because you're probably not going to want to print everybody that's in Offering Helper, because some of them aren't regular church members, and you usually only want regular church members in your directory. So you can actually deselect people here, and that way when you do your final merge, those people will not show up in the directory. There's another way to do that though, and I'm going to show you that now. So I'm just going to close this first. Another way to select which donors will appear in your church directory is to do it from within Offering Helper. I've got Offering Helper running here, and so I'm just going to show you how that works. If I just bring up the name list and go onto the Other tab, you'll notice that I have this field here, this Include in Directory checkbox. It's always been there. What you can do is go through your list of donors and uncheck people that you do not want to show up in the directory. So I'm just going to go and deselect a few here. And then I'm going to close that, close Offering Helper. Now back in Word, I'm going to, on the Mailing tab again, I'm going to click on the Edit Recipient List. And I'm going to, this time I'm going to click on the Filter command here. And what I want to do is I want to find that directory field. It's actually just called directory in the underlying database. So there's directory. And I want to compare it. I want to make sure it's equal to, then I type in the word true here. So what that means is it's only going to display donors where the directory field is equal to true, which means it was checked. So I click OK. And you'll notice before there was a person named Robert Atkinson there, but now he's gone. So it's filtered out people that I do not want in the directory. And I did that in Offering Helper, and then I used the filter command. So you can either do it using these check marks right here, or you can do it from Authoring Helper and then using Filter. Before we begin laying out the directory, we need to think about the final page size that we want to print this directory in. You can print to 8.5 by 11 sheets and give yourself a full-size directory, or you can do a booklet style where you take an 8.5 by 11 and fold it in half and print 2 pages per sheet. So that's what I'm going to do in this demonstration. So I'm going to click on the Page Layout tab here, and I'm going to click on that little marker right there, and that's going to bring up the Page Setup dialog. And under Pages here, I can either do, normal is going to be obviously 8.5 by 11. I can either choose 2 pages per sheet, and what that'll do is it'll still print on 8.5 by 11, but it'll divide it up in 2 sections. So you'll be able to print 2 pages per sheet. Another interesting option is Book Fold, and that chooses the same paper size, 8.5 by 11 with 2 pages per page. But it when you do the final printout, it arranges them all perfectly so that all you have to do is fold the sheets, and all the pages are printed in the proper order. You do have to have a duplex printer. I'm just going to go with 2 pages per sheet, and that means I'm going to have to kind of do a final assembly of all the different pages in the book. One thing I forgot is I need to switch the orientation. So I'm going to go back into that dialog and I'm going to switch it to landscape and click on OK. Now you can see that my page size is, I got 4.5 there plus an inch there, so that's 5.5. And my page height is 6, 7.5 plus 1 at the top, so that's 8.5. So you can see that I'm dealing with half of a page, but like I said, it will print 2 of these on one full 8.5 by 11. I'm now going to begin actually laying out the directory and putting in the proper codes for my data. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to use a table to give me some formatting layout capabilities here. So I'm going to click on the Insert tab and insert a table. I'm going to go 1 row, 3 columns. Just prior to this, I also narrowed the columns. You'll notice that my margins, I should say. I want as much room as possible for my data, so I changed the margins to reduced amount. I'm going to do a 3 columns. This is where my picture is going to be. I'm going to have a picture directory. That's going to be a separate step, by the way. It's not going to be, we're not going to pull pictures out of Authoring Helper. That's going to be something we'll have to do manually at the end. So that's going to be a blank box for this exercise. And in this middle box, I'm going to put the name and address. And in the far right box, I'm going to put the person's phone number and email address. Now, you don't have to use a table. You can use tabs and that kind of thing, but table works good. That's what I'm going to do for this tutorial. And of course, you might choose to do a completely different layout. That's fine too, but this is just to show you how to do it. So I click in my middle box here and I go back to my Mailings tab. Now I need to start inserting my codes. This little drop-down box here, these are all the codes that are available, all the data that is available from Authoring Helper. So I want to start putting in, I'll start with the last name. You'll notice it puts a code there. So when I do the actual merge, that code will be replaced with the person's last name. I can also type things, so I'll type a comma and then I'll type a space, and then I'll put another field in, the first name. Now I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to put the children in there as well. So that puts that code in. Press enter again. I'm going to do the address field, press enter. Now I do the city field. Now I type a comma and a space. And I do the province. This was originally designed for Canadian churches, but it works just as well for American churches. Put that in there. 2 spaces usually, that's what I do. Not everyone does that, but then a postal code. All right, now those are my codes that are going to be displayed. Now there's an interesting feature here. This panel here is Preview Results. If I click on this button, it replaces the codes with actual data. So you can see the person's name and the address, etc. I can cycle through the different records using these fields right here. So it gives me an idea what it's going to look like. If I click this again, I go back to the codes. Now in this box, I want to type in, I want to put the email or the phone number in the email, and I want it to be write justified, so I'm going to change this box to write justified. Go back to my mailings tab. I'm going to insert phone number, press enter, and I'm going to insert the email. Now there's a few things I want to fix here. Let's go back to the preview here. You'll notice that there's a lot of space in between each line. I want to eliminate that, so I'm going to go, let's see, where do I do that? Go back to home page. I'm going to select the whole table like that. Click anywhere in the table. Click on that little marker there. Then I'm going to click on the paragraph, bring up the paragraph dialog, and you'll see it's putting in 10 point in between each line, so I'm going to change that to 0. It collapses things a little bit. Now I'm going to go back to mailing and preview. The nice thing about Word is that it'll automatically collapse a line if there's no data. So you'll see that for people that have no children, it hides that line, and for people that do, it displays it. So there's people no children, there's someone with children, and it kind of adds space there. I'm going to turn off my paragraph marks here. I'm also going to change the font size just to give myself a bit more room. I'm going to try a 9 point here. Another thing you can do, you don't have to stick with just codes. You can also type things. So let's go back to this. I can actually, if I wanted to, I could put a little label here like this. Phone number, for example, email. And the text, of course, will appear the same for every record, but the codes will be replaced by the actual data. So that's just an optional feature. I'm going to eliminate that though, because I might run out of room since I don't have a lot of horizontal space to work with. Another thing I'm going to do is just for appearance, I'm going to bold the last and first name. All right, so now when I see the actual data, the last and first name will be bold. There's a couple more things we can fix here. You'll notice that as we cycle through each record, when people have children, it sort of expands the row and then it collapses it. Well, we want it to stay the same for every one, just to give a nice consistent appearance. So what we need to do is select the table and let's see, select it and then right click anywhere in it and do table properties. And then click on the row tab. Now normally it'll choose the height of the row by itself, but we don't want it to do that. We want to specify the height specifically, and we want it to be an exact amount so it doesn't ever change. So I'm just going to hit OK, and then it's going to choose one last final size, and I'm just going to tweak it a bit just so I've kind of put my size in there so it stays the same, a little bigger than what you need. And now let's try cycling through our records, and you'll notice the row, the height of the table stays the same. But you'll also notice that my columns are they're kind of moving a little bit. So I need to do the same thing for columns. So I'll select the table and do table properties. And this time I'll column again. I want a preferred width. I'm going to just go that way, and then I'm going to manually size it. Now you may have problems with wrapping with long. Let's give myself more room here. Okay, now I think columns should stay the same. So now everything's fixed. Oh, I know what happened. I lost a bunch of space here. Something like that. You can play with it. All right, so that there's a bit of a problem there. All right. The other thing I want to do is get rid of these borders. So I want to select the table and go over here and specify no border. And that way it'll just print the names and so on. Now I'm probably going to want actually a little space in between each entry. So there's a bit of a divider. So I'll try that. Now, just in case it's showing grid lines, it might not be showing that on your computer. So just so you know how to turn that on and off, it's handy to see where the lines are, where the table boundaries are. So this view grid lines feature turns that on and off. Now, so far we only have one entry, but of course we want to fill the whole page. So what I want to do now is I want to select a whole entire row. So I'm going to click over here. That selects the whole row. And I'm going to press Control C on my keyboard. That'll copy that row into the clipboard. Then I click just underneath it and I paste it. All right, now it's got lines in there. I don't know why, but we'll get rid of them later. So I paste it all the way down the page until I hit the end of the page. Then I've gone one too far, so now I hit undo once, Control Z, and there I have. I want to fill the page, but I don't want to go to the next page. So now I want to get rid of the lines again. Oh, just a second. Now you'll notice though it's got the same person on each row. It's not quite what we want, and I'll get rid of this. So you'll see what I've done is I've duplicated the codes every time. Now in order to advance from one person to the next, I have to add a special code here. So I click on the second row, not the first row, second row just in front of the first code, and I go up here on my mailings tab, go into rules, and I specify next record. Now that is going to say for row 2, go to the next person. Now I have to do that for each row all the way down, but not the first row. So to make it easy, I'm going to delete all these rows, right click, delete rows. Now this is the row I want to copy. And so I'll copy that one, click just below it, paste a bunch of times, go back one, undo, there we go. So now I've got all the rows have this next record code in. So let's just see what that looks like, preview. So now you see that I've got, each row has a new person. And that's what that next record field does. Otherwise it would just do the same person all the way down the page. Now what you're going to find is that as you, let's say you all of a sudden decide, oh, I want to go for a different font or I want to change something, you'll have to make the changes in the first one, and then you have to copy the first one down into all the other ones. So you'll probably be doing this a number of times, delete everything here, make some changes up in the first one, copy it, paste them all the way down. So it's going to be a rather repetitive process until you get it just the way you want. And then you can make sure you've got everything duplicated, make sure that next record code is in each one. Now I want to get rid of my borders because for some reason they came back. So I'll go like this. All right. So and then another thing you can do is check the spacing here in the bottom is a little different than on the top. So what I need to do is very slightly tweak the height of each row until that's even the way I want it, but I'll just leave that for you to do. All right, so we're now ready to do the merge. So click on the mailing tab. By the way, I'm going to actually do a save first. So let's just save that. I already saved it, but it's if you haven't saved, it'll come up with the dialog box asking you where you want to save it and what you want to call it. I just called it mail merge. You can call it whatever you want. This is a good thing to keep, this template, I call it, because a couple of years down the road, you'll probably want to do another directory. So it sure will save you some time having to set this all up again. So save this, this whole thing. And now let's do a merge. All right, so on the mailing tab, this far right here says finish and merge. There's a few options. You could send it right to a printer, but that's not a good idea because we want to do some fine tuning. So this will do the merge and put the results in a new document. So edit individual documents, and it asks you to do how many, which records, and we want to do all. Click OK. So now it pulls all the data out of Offering Helper, and it gives me a whole new document now. You'll notice I've got 37 pages here, and everybody's in there like that. So you might see something. What'll happen inevitably is you'll see something you don't like, and you want to redo the whole thing. So this is a new document. I could just delete it. I don't need to keep it because I still have my the original template. So I could tweak any changes I wanted to, redo the merge. It'll merge it into a new document, and I keep doing that until I got everything the way I want it. There will be some final editing changes that probably would be best done in the final document. Like let's say you go and you see somebody's email is too wide or something, and you might want to make some uh, specific changes just to that record. Then you'll probably want to put a title page, so I want to click at the very beginning of the document and hit Control Enter. Now this is where I'm going to do my title page. Okay, and then at the very end you might want to do some other special stuff, and then you're ready to print it. So there's a church directory, and then you have to, as I mentioned, I'm not going to try to. It's actually not possible to pull pictures out of Offering Helper, so you'll have to actually go into each person and insert a picture. So let's just do that here. Insert a picture and go and find a picture somewhere. Here's one. It's not a person, but that's okay. And so that you do that for each one and make it look just the way you want it, and then you print. All right.